Don't you love paying for things that don't really exist? Stuff that was kind of decided upon as a bit arbitrary but wasn't really developed and isn't really that much. Yeah, artificial value is getting absurd with gaming to the point where even release dates are dying, so you know what, today we have a hell of a lot to work through. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Deep Dive, the weekly show where we, take a deeper look into the most important industry issues and work out what direction the wind is blowing. And a massive thank you to our patrons who support this show and also get early access to episodes. Release dates are somewhat dying. At this stage, I don't think it's an absurd statement to make. I mean, just look at EA's Battlefield 5. That's a game that had an official release date of the 20th of November 2018, but it was actually first playable on the 9th. Now, things like this, they're an attempt to create artificial value and to influence people towards where publishers will make the most money, which, I mean, is their right, it does make sense, and that's through store cuts, alternative business models, and alternative editions of games. Why? Well, I mean, yeah, the more money the merrier, but there's actually something else, something that I don't really think is talked about that much. Inflation. So $60 in 2005's money is about $78 in today's money. And you know what's really interesting? $80 is pretty much what publishers charge for special editions of games these days. Now, it is true, the industry has grown massively since then. The publishers overall are doing far better, even though the base edition of a game has it stayed well below inflation, unlike most consumer goods. So make no mistake, they still are doing great business. We're not going to start shedding tears for them. But I do think this inflation example does really show you why publishers are so darn keen to squeeze as hard as they can, because they know that in 2005, people were willing to pay $60 of 2005 money. Now, because of inflation, that's the modern day equivalent of 80, so from the publisher's perspective, they know that consumers will purchase a game for that much money relative to their purchasing power. They have the historical data, and now they are trying to squeeze as hard as they can to, make it a reality. It is, of course, an interesting economic problem for the publishers, especially because they find themselves really playing chicken with each other on price point and monetization, trying to see who will, edge it out first. How has this all really played out? Well, at first, way back, it was simple things like special editions that would maybe have a special gun or an alternative character skin. Of course, bearing in mind, this was really all in the days before these things were always a part of a DLC store. Most people didn't really mind that much, and it was back in the day also where retailer exclusive editions of games were extremely common. That was really a time before digital had taken over, where, the likes of GameStop US or Game UK had a massive amount of power. Of course, by being physical retail, they had to deal with fixed release dates. The best you could hope for an early game was Amazon shipping you your copy a little bit earlier. Well, things have really changed, and for many different reasons. With this old paradigm, the publishers would have had a number of threats from their perspective. First, retailers and distributors took a large cut. Physical game sales are just less profitable. Second, their prominence gave the retailers a lot of control over the release of games. And then third, being physical retail, publishers had a lot less release date flexibility. Then, while it doesn't really relate to today's topic, there's also things like pre-owned sales, which of course publishers despise. Over time, we have seen publishers pretty much fight against retail as many ways as they can, while simultaneously trying to, of course, increase their profit per sale, knowing what they know about the historical data, but trying to do it without breaking that $60 price point that consumers have been used to. And this has all led our industry in such a strange direction, resulting in the creation of a lot of artificial value, i.e. things that really aren't worth anything. They aren't really a part of the product that you're purchasing, not really. They're just, extra forms of manipulation, extra things to sweeten the pot. And this is something that's been really, I would say, getting worse and worse, with release dates being the most recent, and I would say one of the worst casualties of this, especially in how they're often implemented. First, flexible release dates have the potential to be extremely anti-retailer. Since early access periods that would be digital only are, almost always going to be the full game pre-launch, anyone who is interested in them automatically is not going to be purchasing the game in retail. Now, that pushes customers, of course, to the far higher revenue per sale digital storefronts and would damage the supply side of the pre-owned market, especially since it's targeting those day one sales that often do end up on pre-owned. Now, so far, this has not been fully realized, with the likes of Ubisoft striking deals on physical pre-orders with the likes of Amazon and GameStop that do include early access, but I think that early access generally would skew digital a bit more anyway because of the impulse buy, sort of, the idea of I'm sitting on my computer and if I hit this button, I will get to play the game once it's downloaded, that kind of aspect. Right now, EA are pretty much the only publisher that have really done something like that. While Anthem's premium Legion of Dawn edition didn't have early access, its Origin Access Premier version actually did, which wouldn't be great for the retailers. Past that, well, I mean, early access, that means you're pre-ordering, right? That means you're buying into the game at its highest price point, the highest it will ever be, and in the case of, say, EA, you're doing that on a storefront where they would be getting 100% of the cut, of course, not having to deal with Epic or Valve's revenue splits. Same goes for, Uplay or another publisher-owned store. Now, what's even better for the publishers, of course, is that early access, well, that's typically a part of a special edition, which typically is about $80, which, not coincidentally, is essentially equal to $60 in 2005's money. And the maths in this one really is interesting indeed. A publisher can expect to get about 55% of a game sale through retail. So, today $60 would equal $33. Now, that's not a lot as compared to the ticket price, and especially when you compare that to what $33 would have been in 2005, where it would have went a lot further because there has been about 30% inflation since then, meaning that in today's money, a standard retail game sale from 2005 would be worth about $42.95. Now, before you start shedding tears for them, remember that the overall market is a lot larger and more games are being sold these days. Overall, though, things are pretty clear. Publishers will want to move digital. How would those numbers work out? Well, let's just run through them. And really, this is the juicy bit. Sure, $60 has not tracked with inflation, but if a game is sold on a publisher's own store, well, they get all of it minus, a 5% transaction fee, and maybe some store-side customer service. Even with the price not tracking with inflation, that's still significantly ahead of where they were back in 2005 when they were, say, a bit more reliant on retail, even with, game prices being relatively higher in comparison to the value of the dollar. Now, those $80 versions of games, well, that's where the publishers really are ahead. Then, if those early access sales are skewing digital more than retail, which I do think they likely do, then each digital early access sale, that's another launch day retail sale denied, taking a copy of the game off the pre-owned market. Now, this sort of anti-retailer move, again, it's not really being widely done, but of course, EA have gotten pretty close with Origin Access, so I'd say that's something to be on the lookout for in the future. There's then another aspect of artificial value that I think compounds in all of this, the network effect. We have seen these early release dates tend to happen in multiplayer games with a heavy network effect. Now, what is a network effect? It's the growth vehicle that the likes of Facebook and LinkedIn really grew off. So, the way that a product gets better, the more people who are on it. So you join Facebook and suddenly Facebook is better for all of your friends. Kind of. That's the idea anyway. What it really means is that one person joining kind of puts a pressure on their friend network to join. Well, with early access games, many tend to be multiplayer loot shooters like Anthem and The Division 2. Both games where it's all about gaining power with your friends. Exactly the type of game where a player would not want to feel like they're getting behind the curve. Now, while this is not exactly as powerful for something like, say, Battlefield 5, well, it still is pretty darn powerful. It's the fact that you can see your friends playing the game before release. That's the main sort of, vector of influence. Now, I've discussed the death of release dates here as my primary example of artificial value, and I think I'm choosing it specifically because it's so powerful. It certainly is going to appeal to more people, than just, say, deluxe edition only skins. And I think by analyzing this stuff, you really can see the goals of publishers. Early release dates drive people towards day one purchases of games where they're at their maximum price. Then they typically drive people towards spending more money by purchasing higher editions of games, something that is often highlighted by the absurd release date tables that some modern games have, just have needed to be understood. Then in the case of EA, well, you can see it's all a ploy towards Origin Access. And if you look over to Xbox and Game Pass and the rumored higher tier of PS Plus, we do see that all of these things could be used as future leverage by publishers to onboard people onto their latest generation of business model. Then publishers could also use this to undermine retail if they wanted to, but retail still does have quite an impact, at least I believe in the US market, so that probably will take a few years to start happening. Still, the finances I think are pretty clear. Digital sales make a lot more money for the publishers, and they also restrict pre-owned market supply, which is going to be major. So personally, I really don't like this just the direction this has been going in for a few reasons. First, it creates a strange tiering of players. People who buy the full game are pretty much second class, now more so than ever. Really, it's not just a case of premium skins, it's faster access to the game, and that is troublesome, I think, given how this is mostly done on progression-focused games. Now, it can lead to some properly silly situations as well. Just look at Anthem, where the Legion of Dawn purchasers got late access to the game, even though they purchased the expensive edition, of course, because EA's goals were Origin Access Premium. And that's not even mentioning games, how these games often face big problems in their early days, just like with Anthem. And then, of course, the paid betas, which tie into this as well. Right now, it's mostly a loot shooter thing, but I'm worried it will expand over to other genres. I mean, yeah, sure, Mass Effect Andromeda's early access trial was a bit odd, but will that happen to Mass Effect 4 or Dragon Age 4? Will they launch a week early to subscribers? I mean, I hope not, but I'm a bit worried. As always, to me, yeah, indies are just going to come to the rescue here, and believe me, I am actually trying to figure out a good way to highlight more indie content on this channel, because I truly do believe they're the future. So there you go. That is a bit of a talk about the goals of publishers, artificial value, and the death of release dates, which really is the most recent form of artificial value that they are using as a way to influence people to really where they're going to be getting the most revenue per purchase. Let me know what you think about the direction this stuff's going in down below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.